Hi guys, today we're talking about Nietzsche's metamorphosis, as well as the archetypal hero's journey, and then we're just also talking a little bit about the dark night of the soul. So we're going to look at Nietzsche, we're going to look at Joseph Campbell, and then we're going to look at the psychological transformation and alchemy that comes from trauma. Trauma breaks you open. Okay, so we have already spoken about Plato's allegory of the cave, and the wonderful thing about allegory is a picture paints 1,000 words, right? So within these allegories written by these great people, we can gleam into the deeper mysteries of the human psyche, right? So in his book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche talks about the metamorphosis of the spirit. So there is the spirit, still disincarnate, and then there is the dragon. And the dragon has everything written on it, all the thou shalts, all the thou shalts not. Everything in existence is written on the scales of the dragon. And the dragon has these golden scales with all of these rules and, you know, basically existence written on it. And the spirit wants to understand the dragon, wants to understand existence, wants to understand life, a law, meaning. And then the spirit incarnates and becomes a camel. And the only word that the camel knows is yes, right? So if the dragon says you should do this, the camel says yes. If the dragon says you should not do this, then the camel says, okay, I will not do this. And the camel is a beast of burden, right? So it's radical personal responsibility, and it's taking on laws and following them. So the camel is an example of somebody who carries the burdens of society, who takes responsibility, and who follows the rules. And then one day this is too much for the camel, and then the camel's back breaks. This is actually where that whole thing comes from, right? When the camel's back breaks. And then when the camel's back breaks, it becomes a lion. And the lion only knows the word no. So if the dragon says, thou shalt, then the lion says, no, I will not. If the dragon says, thou shalt not, the dragon says, no, I will. And the dragon is the rebel, right? The dragon is the system buster, the one that questions everything, questions society. And one day the rebel, the lion's heart breaks. And when the lion's heart breaks, he realizes that he is just living in direct contrast to the dragon. So he is still attached to the dragon. And then when his heart breaks, he becomes the child. And the child is creativity. The child is new norms, new paradigms, the creation of a whole new way of living, right? And the child is a symbol of people who have transformed the hypernorm, people who have brought awakening, right? People who have alchemized a certain way of being, and who isn't angered by it anymore, right? But who flows with the punches. So the divine fool, like Nietzsche said, the fool is the lowest and the highest archetype. Okay, so I think that that allegory is pretty self-explanatory, but it has to do with the journey that we take within life. Many people don't even become camels, right? So don't knock the camel. Okay, and then I want to talk about Joseph Campbell. So Joseph Campbell wrote A Hero with 1,000 Faces. He was an anthropologist, I think, and he looked at all the myths, all the stories, all the religions, you know, many of them all around the world, and then he took out a golden thread. And this golden thread that is similar for all of these stories is called the archetypal hero's journey. So the archetypal hero's journey starts with call to adventure, right? Something needs to change, call to adventure. And then because the person is scared, there is refusal to take the call. And then there is divine intervention, which is usually, the universe hitting you with a baseball bat or everything falling apart. And then there is the dark night of the soul, death, resurrection, and then eventually going back to the people. So if you think of any story that is worth its weight in gold, right? You can think about Star Wars, you can think about the life of Christ, you can think about any proper beautiful fantasy story where there's a hero. Then Hollywood also follows this principle of the archetypal hero's journey, because it is the journey that we take through life if we pick up the responsibilities of growth, and if growth is our highest value. Life is a way of waking us up to our own blind spots, and this is the dark night of the soul. So Jung spoke about the dark night of the soul, and this is when everything in your life falls apart. When you lose everything, it could be a death, it could be a divorce, it could be an illness, it could be a job loss, but something that completely changes the way that things have been up until that point. And then the ego cannot project onto that specific thing anymore, and then we go through a collapse of the ego again, right? And this is the dark night of the soul. It's very uncomfortable. It can last weeks, it can last months, it can even last years. But the dark night of the soul is very, very transformative, because in the archetypal hero's journey, this would then be, after divine intervention, dark night of the soul, then death, of the ego, rebirth, and then eventually going back to the people. So going back to the people would be the hero then teaching people what he or she learned within the dark night. And if you're going through a dark night, I know it's not easy, right? But it's divinely scripted. It's divinely scripted, and if you can sit in it and learn from it, eventually what you had to go through to survive, you can help other people with when they're going through the same. So I just want to say that I do believe that stories have transformational value. They're worth their weight in gold, right? So yeah, that's all I have to say for today. We spoke about Nietzsche, we spoke about Joseph Campbell. Go look at A Hero with a Thousand Faces. There are beautiful videos on YouTube by Joseph Campbell. You can also look at Das Spoke Zarathustra by Nietzsche. I'm a very, very, very big Nietzsche fan. I know many people only remember that he said God is dead, but he actually said God is dead because we killed him, right? And he was talking about the fact that society cannot survive without human values, so it has to be replaced by something. And then he came up with the whole striving for the Übermensch, the superhuman, right, which would be the divine child. So just remember that whatever you're going through in your life, it is scripted. Like I said, this game has been laid out, even though we are in an inverted matrix, even though the archons do control this matrix. The universe doesn't waste energy, right? So we are here to learn, and one of the ways through which we learn is by going through the archetypal hero's journey. So think to yourself, what is the dragon? What is the camel? What is the lion? What is the child? And where am I? Do I know lions? Do I know camels? And how can I get to Leela, the divine play of the child? So that's it for today, guys. I hope you'll have a lovely day.